Check, check. I'm live. I'm live. And I needed to get this stuff off my chest tonight. I'm going to be out of commission for the most part Wednesday through Sunday. I'll still be dropping videos, but not live videos. Check me out on Twitter, Calix Boxing 2. You can always find me there. You can always find my videos, daily videos there, and those won't stop either. But the lives won't be going live Wednesday through Sunday, as I'll be out of commission with some stuff. But I needed to get this stuff off my chest tonight. I've had about 48 hours to analyze all of this stuff, all of the ongoings of what happened between Spence and Ugas, all of the rumors, all of the conspiracy theories, the angles of what happened in this fight, how the fight played out, um, the narratives after the fight, the narratives going into the fight, and now we've got Spence versus Crawford, like legitimate Spence versus Crawford fight talks. Um, First, let's address how the fight played out. That's a good way to start. First round, they feel each other out. Second round, Prime Spence walks out the door, walks out the corner. And what did we say coming in? And look, man, a lot of times this spin and these narratives and these conspiracy theories stem from guys making preview and prediction videos coming in. And then instead of admitting that they were wrong about a few things, they look for alibis. So they start to look for, and it also could be clickbait. You know, it's clickbait saying the fight was fixed or whatever the theories are, whatever the narratives are. But let's start there first because it's an easy one to debunk. I want people to realize that when they accuse a guy of being part of a fixed fight in which he loses, they're accusing him of the cardinal sin, the worst sin in boxing. And that's not only cheating, but cheating to lose. Taking money in order to lose, take a dive against the opposing fighter. And when we look at Ugas doesn't have a track record of being that guy. He just doesn't. Also, if you're going to take a dive, there are easier ways to take a dive that don't involve a broken orbital bone and blood coming out of the urine after a fight. If Ugas is going to take a dive, and I just talked to Carcino about this, and Carcino swears he took a dive. And I try to explain to Carcino that if a guy is going to take a dive, wouldn't it be easier to take a Malik Scott dive against Deontay Wilder? Wouldn't it be easier to just take a dive early in the fight? Why go through 10 rounds of punishment, 30 minutes of punishment against a big physical puncher in which your orbital bone is broken, and then you wait for the ring doctor to stop the fight after your orbital bone is broken, and you fight 3+ rounds with a broken orbital bone? Why would you do that if the fight is already fixed? Why not get the fight stopped earlier? And was Ugas's corner not aware that the fight was fixed? Because wouldn't they have thrown in the white towel before their fighter fights 3 rounds with a broken orbital bone if they knew the fight was fixed already? It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't compute. It doesn't last under scrutiny. The fight wasn't fixed. So where do we go from there? How we go from there is Ugas is a good fighter, and he ran into a great fighter on Saturday night. And not only did he run into a great fighter, he ran into a great fighter in his peak performance. This was Spence's best performance by my estimation. I mean, you can put it up there. You can put Kell Brook up there. You can put the Porter fight up there. But this was Spence's most dominant night against a good fighter. And that doesn't change. Like, Ugas was a good fighter coming in. He was legit number 3. The welterweight rankings, it's a deep division, but it's a division in which you have younger guys up and coming. Vergil, Boots Ennis. Those guys are around 4 to 5. And then you got some other young guys, Stanionis at the bottom of the rankings coming up. You've got guys coming up the division. But then and then you've got older guys like Keith and Danny Garcia falling down the rankings. barely hanging on. But you got these two guys at the top, Crawford and Spence, and then you got the guy at number 3 who was a perfect opponent to figure out where Spence is in his career, because he's a consistent guy. He's a smart guy. All right. And he's a guy that if you don't show up with your A game, if you're not who they say you are, he's going to find you out. He's going to find you out. And what we found out is Ugas went in the ring to find out for us what Spence is there in 2022. And what we found out is in the second round, in between round 1 and 2, when Spence walked out of the corner going into the second round, prime Spence walked out that ring corner. And when he did, the fight was, for all intents and purposes, was over. It was over. When prime Spence walked out, there was no shot of Ugas winning that fight from there on out. And there's no reason to look for excuses. There's no reason to look for alibis. A good fighter doesn't beat a truly great fighter when a great fighter is on his game. And Spence was on his game. This was prime Spence. This was replenished Spence. This was Spence looking great after the weigh-in, talking about his nutrition coach. He looked strong. He looked fresh. He did not slow down throughout the fight. And let's talk about Ugas' strategy. I think that Ugas' strategy coming in was to use his legs a little bit and try to somewhat match Spence's output. And from the third round on, that went out the door. So Ugas made the slight adjustment that apparently a lot of people missed, that I'm going to stay on my front foot. Try to not give up my leverage against Errol Spence. I can't match his output, so I'm going to try to pick off as many shots of his shots as possible and try to land as many big right hands as possible, whether it be from countering opportunities or from catching Errol Spence in lulls. And that's what happened, and it paid dividends for him in the 6th round. My one criticism of Ugas will be he didn't follow up on those 3 big right hands that landed before the mouthpiece fell down. And he didn't jump on Errol Spence. But for you to take the jump that because he didn't jump on Errol Spence, that the fight was fixed, that's quite the jump to take. I think that Ugas should have jumped on him before Lawrence Cole picked up the mouthpiece, but he didn't. That's my one criticism of Ugas. Otherwise, I thought he fought a decent fight. He just lost. He just lost to a better fighter. Shout out Marion Brown. I still thought Ugas could have done a lot better. Porter and Brook gave Spence problems. Ugas should have been able to do something. And he did do some stuff. That's the thing. Like, the judges got it right. Ugas won 2 of the first 6 rounds. And 2 of the judges gave him a 10-8 round in the 6th. So he was down 1 to 2 points after halfway through the fight. The problem is, I feel like he fought the best Spence of Spence's career up to this point. He fought a better Spence than fought Porter and fought Kell Brook, from my estimation. This was prime Spence. This is Spence's best performance. And Spence looked physical. Spence walked Ugas down. Spence came in with bad intention. And prime Spence does not lose to 3 through 10 in the division. Prime Spence has one adversary, and that's Terrence Bud Crawford. And I've said for years, I bigged up Terrence Crawford on this channel for, a decade? Back when people were saying Adrian Broner is the guy, I was saying, no. There's this guy over here, Bud Crawford. He's the guy. Before it was fashionable to call him Boogeyman Bud, I was doing that. And 10 years later, 2022. But for 3 or 4 years now, I've been saying I think Bud beats Spence fairly easily, and it gets bloody towards the end of the fight. This was the first fight where I saw Spence perform, and I said, man, I don't know. To me, watching Spence in this fight, he entered worthy adversary range when it comes to Bud Crawford. I'm watching this fight, and I'm saying, man, Crawford versus Spence would be a hell of a fight. And we've been asking for this fight for quite some time. But I think if this fight happens next, it's happening at the perfect time, because now it's for all the marbles at 147. And now it's two fighters coming off of career-defining performances, career best performances against arguably the best competition they faced up until this point in their career. So it's happening at a perfect time. But I asked myself, it did take some time to make this fight. Why? And we know one guy has been wanting this fight for a while. And we know the other guy seemed a bit reluctant. And we know the other guy's team was very reluctant. And we know we were hearing rumors about 70-30 splits. And now it's all of a sudden, no, I never asked for 70-30 split. Now all of a sudden a change of tune. So I asked myself, why? My instincts tell me that when Bud and Spence get it on, we're going to find out why it's taken a while for this fight to happen. Even though I'm excited about it, even though Spence is coming off career best performance, even though there's a change of tune, my instincts tell me that Bud Crawford's going to show up against Spence, and it's still going to be bloody late in the fight. But there's this other part of me that says, you got it wrong about Spence coming into this fight. This wasn't Ferrari Crash Bud. This wasn't Eye Patch Bud. This was Prime Bud. On top of that, Bud has a new team. Bud has a new nutritionist. On top of that, Bud all of a sudden has found some confidence that he didn't have before when it comes to Bud Crawford's name being brought up. Before it was like Candyman. You look in the mirror, you don't say his name, or he's going to show up. Spence before didn't say Bud's name all that much. Now he's screaming it from the rooftops, like Rocky in Russia. Why the change of heart all of a sudden? Has Spence found something? Spence has a lot of momentum now. So do we have ourselves a fight? What I do know is we have ourselves a worthy adversary for Bud Crawford, because before I was saying Bud's going to have to move up to 154 to find a worthy adversary. Bud's going to have to move up to 154 to try to get a fight between the 154 Charlo and Castaño winner in order to become undisputed, because Errol's not going to step in the ring with him. That's changed. I think Errol Spence is a worthy adversary now. I think after watching this fight, it made me scratch my head. It made me think, like, man, I've been missing something. This Errol Spence right here. Well, what else am I supposed to think, though? Like, there's a reason that this fight hasn't happened. And we could blame it on economics, but at a certain point, a fighter has to be vocal and outward about wanting the fight. And for a couple of years now, we've only had one guy vocal. And now we have two guys vocal, which makes me think more than ever that we're going to get this fight next. There's still people telling me you're being too optimistic. This fight is not going to happen. I think it will. I think both fighters genuinely want it now. What made you feel Spence wasn't worthy before? Well, a lot of things. You got to remember, he fought once in September 2019. Okay? And he didn't look all that great against Porter. I mean, he looked good. He didn't look all that great against Danny Garcia. He looked good, but he looked like a good fighter for a while. And yes, he was fighting better competition, so it's hard to look at. But I just always saw him as a clear number 2 behind Bud. But after watching this fight, I'm sitting on the couch and I'm looking at this and I'm like, man, Errol looks like a killer. This is a good fighter. There's some revisionist history going on. Obviously, we're hearing that the fight was fixed, which is a stupid tinfoil hat stuff. But we're also hearing that, Ugas wasn't that good. No, Ugas is a good fighter. Ugas was a legitimate number 3 guy in the division, and Spence walked him down. And Ugas had some moments. Ugas had his moments in the 6th. As Carcino pointed out on the roundtable earlier, he hurt Spence also with a soloplex shot in the 9th round. I think a lot of people missed that. And it had Errol Spence walking backward for a minute. And that's the thing. Crawford's going to catch Spence with those shots, and he's going to know how to follow up on those shots. And not only that, when Spence takes away some of Crawford's assets early because Crawford is a slow starter. Guess what? Bud's got a bunch more tools in the toolbox. Ugas didn't. Ugas didn't. Um, Ugas had one tool left in the tool chest, and that's to hold his ground, shell up, take some shots, try to pick them off, and then use his leverage and load up on right hands. That was it. That was all he had left in the toolbox. When those tools are taken away from Crawford, when the jab is taken away, when Spence goes to the body, Crawford's going to go back to the body even harder. Crawford can switch from southpaw to conventional seamlessly. So we have ourselves a very different fight. But what I saw from Spence is he's vicious, he's merciless, and he went to the body consistently throughout the fight. I mean, consistently. And he went with bad intentions. And he looks strong. And he's going to be bigger than Crawford. So he's going to be able to use that leverage with success in the fight. So he has attributes going up against Crawford that's going to make this a more intriguing fight than some of the Bud Crawford extremists think. But I still like Bud Crawford in the fight. I'm not going to change my stance on that. But this fight had me saying, it's more intriguing to me now. I'm not as confident as I once was that this is going to be all Bud in this fight. Bud was hurt by short Gamboa. I don't like triangle theories. And true, triangle theories don't work. And he was hurt by short Gamboa. That's true as well. And Crawford was hurt in a few fights. That's true. And Spence was hurt in this fight. They're going to be able to hurt each other. There's no doubt about it. It's a tough call, man. It's just a tough call. This fight more than ever made me think. And I love fights that make me think. It's like you watch a great documentary or read a great book. It makes you stop in your tracks and say, have I been getting this wrong? And that's what this fight made me do. When I watched Spence versus Ugas, I'm like, as the fight's going on, I'm like, have I been getting this Spence versus Bud thing wrong? By saying Bud walks through Spence and stops him late. And I always thought Spence would have moments early in the fight, but because Bud is a slow starter, and while Bud is thinking things out early in the fight, guess what Spence is going to be doing? He's going to be punching. I'm more intrigued by this fight than ever, which makes me think it's happening at the right time. Was Mayweather scared of Pac? I don't know if he was scared of Pac or not, but it took 6 years to make, and whose fault was that? I don't know. We can read into that what we want, but it took 6 years to make, and I know that was on Mayweather. And it's been taken a while for this fight to make, and I know that's on the PBC because Terrence Crawford has been wanting this fight for ages. But to their credit, I think it's happening at the perfect time. All the belts on the line, both fighters coming off of career-defining victories, and both fighters seemingly in their prime. I mean, I think Bud, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Bud's still in his prime. And Errol sure as hell looked like he was in his prime on Saturday night. It just looked like a refreshed, strong, re-energized, refocused Errol Spence. And the scary thing about all this is you hear Spence talk after the fight and you hear him talk on Twitter today, he still felt off. He felt his timing was off. He felt it took himself a while to get going. And I'm watching the second round. I'm like, it took him a while to get going. He was locked in from the second round on. So that's scary to think that he likely thought he had a B to C level performance. And I'm thinking it's the performance of his career. That's the scary part is if his timing wasn't down in this fight, and that may explain him being hurt a couple times, right? But if the timing wasn't down in this fight, I hate to see what he's going to look like in the next fight. It just, all this stuff just makes me rethink things, man. And you got to be able to get on here and say that maybe I was wrong about this, maybe I was wrong about that. Nobody gets it right all the time. And I think what happens is these content creators get things wrong and they look for alibis instead of just admitting they're wrong and pivoting. All it takes is I was wrong about this. I'm going to pivot a little bit. Instead, that's the correct move to make. Let me pivot a little bit. I was wrong. Let me pivot instead of the fight was fixed. How you jump from that to the fight is fixed. Just think of what you're accusing the guy of. Not only are you accusing him of federal crime, you're accusing him of the cardinal sin in boxing, not only cheating, but cheating against himself for monetary gain. It's sad what this brings guys to, just for clickbait or for looking for alibis because their preview or predictions were wrong. I bet Ugas plus 400 because I thought I saw value there. I thought it was going to be a close fight that could have went either way. Maybe Spence 7-5 or 8-4, but maybe if a swing round goes to Ugas here or Ugas there, I hit on the plus 400. I saw this as Ugas more like 250, plus 250. So I'm going to take the plus 400. I was wrong. There was no value there. You see how easy that was? And then I pivot to greatest performance of Spence's career because it was. If Bud doesn't knock out Spence, it's going to be a long night for Bud. Possibly. But the thing is, man, Bud turns it on. And the scary thing about Bud is, let's first highlight this. The great thing about both Bud and Spence is not only are they great fighters, they're entertaining fighters. So not only are you getting greatness, you're getting entertainment value on top of it. There aren't too many fighters that are going to give you both. And these two guys can give you both. And they're going to give us a great fight as well. There's no doubt in my mind that they're going to give us a great fight because both fighters are going to want to take each other's head off on top of the great boxing that you're going to get. So first we've got that. But Bud has a killer instinct. That's the scary thing about Bud. We were talking about the scary thing about Spence is that he felt his timing wasn't on for this fight, and his timing looked great. But when Bud gets hit, he sees red. And when Bud gets hit several times, he sees red even more. So when Spence is coming out fast, which I believe Spence will do because I believe they'll watch Bud's film and they know all about Bud and Bud knows all about Spence. They've been watching each other for years. They know all about each other. Bud knows Spence more than anybody. Spence knows Bud more than anybody. So when Spence comes out fast, because he knows Bud could be a little bit of a slow starter, he's going to hit Bud with a lot of shots. And guess what Bud's going to do? He's going to see red. He's going to turn on that killer instinct. And we're going to have a fun fight. But Bud has that killer instinct like nobody I've seen in the sport. I mean, when he gets hit, it turns ugly. I don't know how Bud is going to deal with Spence's size. Bud is strong, but his natural weight is really 140. Spence could go up to 160 at some point. You know what's interesting about that? And there's a video out there of Spence and Bud next to each other talking trash. And Spence is saying, look at small man over here. Something to that effect. Like, look at lightweight right here. And he's making fun of him. But I saw a video recently, it was from last month, where Bud just walks into a weightlifting room in street clothes and deadlifts 450 pounds in street clothes easily, and smiles at the camera and sizes everybody up in the room. That's who Bud Crawford is. That's a strong dude. And he's a shorter, strong dude who's going to use that leverage against Spence. And not only is that strong dude who can fight on his front foot and possibly push Spence back, because Spence is going to be doing some of that too, but Bud can push him back as well onto the back foot. But he's also a guy who can give you everything else. He has trouble getting the jab off. He'll switch to southpaw. There's a lot in the tool chest for Bud to use and utilize against Spence. But Bud's a scary dude when he sees red. That dog and Bud might be his downfall, possibly. I mean, there are many ways to read this fight. I just always see it as every time I play this fight out in my head, even after Saturday night, I just see Bud coming out on top. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but this is the first fight that had me rethinking that though. This was a great performance by Spence. I don't care. I was just on a round table where a couple of guys were saying they thought Spence looked average or not that good. I don't know what they were looking at. Because to me, Spence looked great on Saturday night, especially coming off his 17-month layoff. I believe Bud is the more overall skilled than the two, more speed and power, I believe. Yeah, and Crawford has power in both hands. Power in both hands. But Spence is strong. That's a strong dude. And his punches have effect. And not only that, he's an active fighter. So if this thing does go distance, you got to take that into account. If a stoppage does not happen either way and it goes to the cards, you got to take that into account that Spence is an active fighter and his punches have flash. So, that's just my overall take that I wanted to get off my chest is up until Saturday night, I always felt that there was a small but clear gap between Bud and Spence. And I think Saturday night erased that gap. I think that this is all the 50-50, 51-49 type of fight that could go either way. I think Spence erased that and is now the worthy adversary that we've been asking for Bud at 147. I don't think Spence is a clear number 2 in my eyes anymore. I think it's more 1A, 1B. Great performance by Spence. He took away Ugas's best assets early and often in the fight. Round 2, round 3, Ugas no longer had the jab, no longer had his legs because Spence not only smothered him, but he went to the body and took his legs away. And all Ugas had at that point was trying to land a big right hand that was going to change the trajectory of the fight. And Ugas fought a smart fight. He was true to himself. He was consistent. He fought a smart fight. He tried to pick off as many shots as possible and look for those small placements, those small openings where he can land a big right hand. It wasn't going to do Ugas any good to throw more punches. It just wasn't. You're not going to stand in the pocket with the bigger, stronger guy and throw more punches with your chin in the air and leaving your body open. The only way you're going to throw more punches and have success is if you're fighting a back-footed strategy fight. And that wasn't going to serve Ugas any good either, because if he's moving backwards, Spence is moving forward with more leverage. And Ugas didn't have the legs to work angles, use lateral movement, work angles against Spence. And I'm not even sure that would have worked for him to begin with. I'm not sure he was capable of that. There's one fighter in the division that is. His name is Bud Crawford. When Spence takes great weapons away from Crawford early in the fight, guess what Crawford's going to do? He's going to reach in the toolbox for more tools. And that's what makes that a great fight. We've seen Crawford get rocked and dropped, but this was the first time we've seen Crawford get seen Spence get touched up. I'm not sure I would say Spence get touched up. Spence got touched up. I don't think Bud has more power. He just hits you with the ones you don't see. Yeah, he hits you with both. Spence got touched up by Porter and Garcia. I don't know what y'all are looking at. Sorry to say Boots and Vergil would do more damage to both of them. Everybody loves Boots and Vergil right now. Just like everybody loved Bud and Errol when they were coming up until they get to the top and then they start to get detractors. Boots and Vergil, 4 and 5 in the division right now, but haven't faced that top competition. So you have everybody loving them now until they get to that 1, 2, 3 territory. And then, like I said, much like Spence and Bud, you're going to get the detractors. You're going to have hate or love at that point once guys get to that level. All right, so now everybody's falling in love with Boots and Vergil, and rightfully so. Both of them look great. But the problem is, once you step up, are they still going to be great? It's the fashionable thing right now to say Boots Ennis beats everybody in the division. Do we really think that Boots Ennis beats Crawford and Spence right now? Like, are we really going to jump to that conclusion? Right now, the 2 top guys in the division, the 2 alpha dogs, are Crawford and Spence, rightfully so. And we're going to find out, hopefully, who is the alpha dog. Spence breaks eye sockets and ribs. That is correct. That is what he does. Ugas hurt Spence. He stood there and watched Spence, and we've been over that. And people say the fight was fixed because of that, which is funny. But no, it is, that is fair criticism of Ugas, the 6th round. It is fair criticism. Landed 3 big right hands and then stood and admired his work when it looked like Spence was hurt. I don't think he would have got Spence out of there. I don't think he would have knocked him out, but you want to see Ugas jump on him there. You are right about that. You are correct. And that is a legitimate criticism of Ugas' performance in the 6th round. But otherwise, I think people are nitpicking. I thought that Ugas fought the best fight available to him. He fought a good fight. He is a good fighter still. He was a good fighter going in. He's still a good fighter. He's just a clear number 3 right now. Like there's a big gap between 1 and 2 and where we see Ugas at number 3. Big gap. Big gap. Spence proved he's too dangerous to try to outslug. That leaves speed. Is Crawford faster than Spence? I believe he is. And I believe he's a more versatile fighter. But once again, it doesn't always come down to versatility. It's who executes the game plan the best, and Spence is going to come out fast in that fight. There's no doubt in my mind. Vergil or Boots needs to go see Stanionis, and they won't. Stanionis is a guy you stay away from. And by the way, Stanionis got step-aside money, so Spence versus Ugas could happen. And he'll likely get step-aside money again. I think he'll have to get step-aside money if Spence versus Crawford happens. So he'll get step-aside money back-to-back. And I think Stanionis is a guy that you're going to have to get creative with and just keep him active for the time being, because I think guys in the top 10 are going to stay away from him for a while. At some point, Crawford is going to have to fight in later rounds when body shots take a toll. Vergil and Boots would beat everybody else but Bud and Spence. It's a fair take. That's a fair take. They both possibly beat Ugas. Fair take. But then again, I don't know. I've seen Ugas in there with better competition. We just don't know. There are a lot of question marks when it comes to Boots and Vergil right now. But we'll see. They both look great. But right now the talk is Crawford and Spence. Those are the 2 top guys that have separated themselves from everybody else. Let's see if they can separate themselves from each other. Hopefully no controversy. And one difference between this and Mayweather-Pacquiao is Mayweather-Pacquiao, neither fighter was in their prime. Also, we knew there was a chance of that fight being a dud. Neither of those in this fight. Both of the fighters are still in their prime, and both of these fighters will make beautiful magic when they get in there with each other, whenever that does happen, hopefully later in 2022. And do I think the fight happens this year? I do. Maybe I'm being too optimistic. I was told that earlier. I was told there's no way that's going to happen next, but I think it will. I'm optimistic that this happens in winter 2022. I am. I think it's time. Both fighters are too outspoken about it. I think it's time. And it's perfect timing. Also, perfect timing to finish this thing off, man. God bless. Thank y'all for tuning in. Look for more content on the channel. Like and hit that subscribe button if you're not subscribed. And follow me on Twitter at CalixBoxing2. I